If you can only have one fruit tree in your yard, it really should be a mulberry tree. And if you're not familiar with mulberries, mulberries look and have the same texture of a blackberry. They actually taste like raspberries. There's a lot of benefits to growing mulberry trees. Number one, they can grow in a very wide variety of gardens and wide varieties of climates. So their zone is zone 6 to 10, but if you are in a lower zone, like in 5, you could still probably grow them if you grow them in a pot and bring them inside during the coldest parts of the winter. The second coolest thing is they actually can be grown in pots, and they do produce very well in pots. Just try to get a large size pot. They are fast growing. I mean, within 1 year, I had a full harvest from these trees. But some would consider that maybe a negative because they're going to grow too quickly. But they actually can handle pruning way better than any tree I've ever seen. I actually pruned one of these guys all the way down to the ground. I will show it to you. They got pruned super heavy, and it came back with a vengeance. So you can prune them, and in fact I don't plan on letting either one of these trees get above 6 or 7 feet tall. They're going to stay short because this is a narrow walkway in my area, and so being able to prune them heavy and keep them short is going to be a big deal for me. And it's probably a big deal for you too if you have a small garden space. They're pretty pest and disease resilient. I did have some struggles with them through the summer, but I think that they were just responding to our heat. Really, the only pest that seems to bother them is going to be the birds, and that's when they start producing their berries. The birds really love their berries. I mean, a lot. And that was okay with me because honestly, these 2 trees produced, I don't know, probably like almost 10-gallon sized bags of berries. It was insane how much these 2 short little tiny trees right here can produce. Way more than my regular blackberry, way more than the strawberry tower I have. They were huge in terms of yields, and in particular this one, which I'll tell you more about later. Another cool couple things about them is that they really only need 1 tree. I have 2 because I'm trying 2 different varieties, but they only need 1. They will pollinate themselves. And their sun requirements are pretty variant. So, I mean, they can go in full Florida sun, or they can sit here where they're almost in shade. So, and they produce the same regardless. So there's a lot of great benefits to these trees. So I got these trees last spring. I got them from greendreamsfl.com. They're actually a local nursery around here that does ship, I believe, all over the country. They have great trees. I absolutely love their perennials. But I ended up getting a Thai Dwarf, which is the shorter one closer to the fence gate. And then the one behind it is a everbearing. And I believe both of these are a type of white mulberry. I think they're also hybrids. There's 3 different kinds of mulberries. There's red, black, and white. I think the most typical ones that people grow for food are the white ones, although I've heard other people growing the red and the black. Believe it or not, the red, black, and white doesn't necessarily mean that that's the color of the berry. In fact, that's actually the confusing part. The easiest way to tell them apart is by their leaf structure. Now, after I planted these, and I have a whole video about how I planted all these trees, so I'll put that down in the description below. But once I planted them, I noticed that the everbearing was having some issues, like the leaf structure wasn't doing very well. It was like the leaves were dying. And so I thought it was like a fungal issue. It was summer here in Florida. Summer is tough on all plants. So I figured what I would do is actually trim it back. I heard that these guys are like super good at being pruned, so I was going to put it to the test. And I trimmed it back probably by 50%, taking off the branches, and then I took off all the leaves. And I only did it to one of them because I wasn't 100% sure that this was going to work out well, although I had seen my friend Jacqueline over at the Wild Floridian do this to her tree to try to get it to produce more, and that's actually one way that some of the farmers that grow these mulberries get them to produce a second set of berries, is by trimming back the branches and then trimming off the leaves, and it will push new growth. So that's what I did. Mainly because I thought that it had a disease, but also kind of as to test to see how well it handles being pruned. being as it is such a fast growing tree, if you saw when I put them in earlier, they were very, very small. And after just probably, I think this was at maybe 4 or 5 months, they had doubled in size, easily doubled in size. And I knew that that meant, okay, these guys are going to grow fast. I can't let them get crazy and out of control. How well can they handle pruning? And so this is the tree after I pruned it, just a stick. And then within, I believe it was 3 weeks, this is all the new growth, and it's beautiful growth. The leaves came back more vibrant. It came back with another flush of berries. And then here it is the following spring. So 1 year after it was planted, look how huge these trees are. This is what I mean by fast growing. You can already start to see the berries on these. So the everbearing produces really well. That's these right here. They're a little bit larger of a berry. I feel like they're a little bit sweeter of a berry. But let me tell you about this one, the front one. This is a Thai Dwarf, and it produces a yield like I have never seen any fruit tree produce. All those red berries are going to turn black, and they do have a little bit more tartness to them, but they're absolutely amazingly good. And like I said, so productive. To harvest the berries, you can pick them off one by one, but if you happen to pick one that's not quite ripe yet, they tend to be extremely tart, sour even. If you're into that, cool, but I kind of like them on the sweet side. So I have found that if you shake them, the ones that are ripe are going to fall off, and that's the easiest way to harvest them so that you're not harvesting ones that are not ready to be taken off yet. So once you're done shaking them, you can pick them up off the ground, which is what I do, but I've seen other people, you can shake them over an inverted umbrella. So take an umbrella, open it up, flip it upside down, and lay it underneath the tree and shake it. Or you can wrap like a blanket, a towel, or a tarp around the bottom to catch all the berries. I didn't mind it this year, although I think next year I might try the umbrella trip because I think that that would be so much easier. Realizing how many berries there are and how much picking I ended up doing this year, I think I'm definitely going to find an easier way to collect them for next year. It still wasn't that time intensive, but it was a little bit time intensive. Now in terms of maintenance for these guys, I watered them every 3 days or so during the hottest part of our year and during our drought season. So during spring when I put them in, every 3 days. When we got into summer before our rains started, it was every 3 days. And then once our rains kind of started and my sprinklers water them 2 days a week, I pretty much stopped watering them. So that was in probably August. I completely stopped watering them. I've never watered them since then, and they have done absolutely fine. I don't treat them for any pests whatsoever. They get nothing. And for fertilizer in spring, when I start to see the buds forming for the fruit, I actually put down my favorite fruit tree fertilizer, which is Job's fruit and citrus fertilizer. That seems to be like pretty much an all-around good one for all of the trees in my garden, citrus or otherwise. Now this tree produced, I believe I ended up with 10 1-gallon size bags of berries, and that wasn't even all of them. When I got towards the end of the season, I was just so sick of picking berries, and I was like, what am I going to do with all of these berries, that I finally decided, like, okay, that's it. The birds can have the rest. And I'm telling you, the birds were very, very thankful. We have seen such an increase in the amount of birds in our yard, which some would say is a negative, because getting a lot of birds means that you're going to be getting a lot of them trying to peck your fruit and stuff like that. But giving them a tree to focus on has made them super helpful in my garden. In fact, they've become my little worm catchers. I have not had any issues with hornworms or with pickle worms that I normally have. I think it's because these new fruits that I'm allowing them to have some, and we're basically sharing, has allowed them to come into the yard, and they are picking up those bad insects as well, which is totally a win-win for both of us. So being as I had way too many bags, this is just 3, but I ended up with 10 by the time I'm done. I think I still have 2 more in the freezer that I'm going to have to work on. I decided I'm going to work on 3 different recipes. This first one right here I'm going to be making is a mulberry lemonade concentrate. So This is something that I can and I can use later, and I can just take a third of each one of these jars, pour it into a pitcher, add some water, and it becomes mulberry lemonade. And then you put the rest in the fridge and then just keep using a third and a third until you reach the full capacity of the jar. Now, all these recipes are water bath canned, but I'm using my Presto electric pressure canner just because I'm using a large volume. It does do water bath canning. I typically do most of my water bath canning in just a regular pot, but since I was doing like a really big canning project this day, I decided to just go ahead and pull it out and use it. So I put the jars in the Presto electric canner. I filled them up with water 1 inch above the jars. I put it in the canner and I got it heated up to kind of clean and sterilize those jars. The next step for the concentrate is to blend up these berries. Now, whenever I pick the berries, you can eat them fresh, but I freeze them. And so I'm grinding up the frozen berries right here. And after I've ground them up, I make sure that I have 4 cups. And then I'm going to take those 4 cups of kind of frozen, ground up mulberries, and I'm going to put them into a pot. I'm putting them in the pot so that way I can heat it up, because everything needs to be heated up before it can go in the jars. And just to throw this out here, this is not a tested and approved recipe. I am basing this recipe on a strawberry lemonade concentrate that is tested and approved. Now, this is risque or controversial because mulberries, technically there are so many different kinds that you can't be 100% sure is whether your variety that you have, particularly the Thai Dwarf is the one that I was using here, if it is acidic enough to compare to a strawberry. Mulberries, depending on where you grow them, the variety, how much water they've had, all these things will change their acidity level anywhere from, I think it's like 3.8 to 5.2, and 4.6 I believe is a magic number for canning, water bath canning. What I ended up doing to make myself feel more comfortable, and I'm not encouraging you to do this, but the thing that I did that made me feel more comfortable is I bought some pH testing strips, and I tested my ground up mulberries, I tested the lemon juice, and then once this was combined, I tested them together to test what was the acidity levels, and they all came in right at like the 4.1, 4.2 range, so I felt comfortable. Now, I'm not going to say that this is like a safe recipe. This is not a tested recipe. So normally when you are testing acidity, you are using, in the laboratories, you are using complex machinery. These little tabs that I have are not always considered 100% accurate. But I felt comfortable doing this, understanding the variety of mulberry that I have, testing the mulberry ahead of time and seeing that it was at a 4.4 already. I felt that with the amount of lemon juice I was adding and with the fact that my mulberries were or seemed to be within that safe range, that by adding the lemon juice and having the acidity tested, I felt like it was okay. If you're not comfortable canning this, absolutely fine. You can still make this, and instead of canning it, you can actually put those jars in the freezer and just defrost them whenever you want, just like the frozen concentrated juice that you find in the grocery store. So back to the recipe, we did 4 cups of mulberries ground up, and then we did 5 cups of pure lemon juice or bottled lemon juice. I went and got pure lemon juice. And then I did 4 cups of sugar. I brought that up to not a full boil, but a simmer. If you full boiled it, they might start to gel and create like a jam or a jelly versus a concentrate. So you don't want to like full blown boil this stuff. You just want to get it to where the sugar melts and it heats up properly. Then I'm going to spoon this into my jars that I had taken out of my Presto electric canner, drained off the water, and now I'm putting the concentrate in the jars. I'm going to wipe off the rims of the jars really good because this is very sticky stuff. Between the berries and the sugar, this is very, very, very sticky. So wipe off the jars with some vinegar and a rag, and then I'm going to put brand new canning tops on, and then we're going to put our rings on fingertip tight, which just basically means that they aren't screwed on like He-Man, but they're not loose either. Usually about a quarter turn past what you can do, where you can do it with one hand. Then I'm going to put them into the Presto electric pressure canner. I'm not pressure canning these, I'm water bath canning them. So there is a step that you have to do when you put the lid on, that you take the regulator off so that it can properly water bath can. And so we put that lid on, and that little black little piece at the top there I ended up taking off. We seal it, and then we put it for 15 minutes. You can see that little black piece is gone now. So then we let it process for 15 minutes. I pull it out, and I'm going to let it rest on the counter here for 24 hours and make sure all my seals sealed properly. And they all did. I was very, very happy with this batch. To use it, you take a third of the jar and you put it in a pitcher, and then you add water to the rest of the jar, mix it up really good. And it can just be cold water. And then to serve it, I just add some ice and then my mulberry lemonade. Now, what I would have done differently in the future is I would have strained out the mulberries, because when you get towards the bottom of the glass jar, the pitcher, you do get some of the seeds. And I don't mind that so much, but if that's something that you don't like and something that I may not, I probably won't do that in the future. Now, the next recipe we're going to be making is fruit leather. So I'm taking some more of my frozen mulberries, and I'm going to grind them up using my food processor. I'm once again doing 4 cups of the frozen ground up mulberries. Once they're ground up, I'm going to put them in a pot so that I can get them to go from frozen to a more liquid state. I'm just going to heat it up slowly on the stove for a few minutes. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 2 cups of lemon juice. Now, this isn't something that's going to be canned, so you can use fresh lemons if you'd rather, or you can use orange juice, or you can use grape juice, apple juice, pretty much whatever juice you want. I went with lemon because I had some lemon juice, but I think in the future, it made it very, very tart. I think in the future I would do an orange juice or an apple juice, because I think that that would add to the sweetness. Now what I'm doing is I'm adding 5 tablespoons of pectin. The pectin is what's really going to help get that texture that you like from a fruit leather. You know, that kind of sticky, flexible texture. If you don't use the pectin, it will kind of come out more like crisp. So adding the pectin, and then I blend it up with the lemon juice or whatever juice you prefer, and then I'm going to pour that into my pot of mulberries that have been kind of cooking here on the stove for just a couple minutes. Then we're just going to stir it up really good. You can see how pretty it is, a dark, dark red. The next step is I got to put it in my dehydrator. Now, I think this would be so much easier putting in a dehydrator that was completely flat. I have this little circle in the center, and I've kind of learned through this process that it's actually best maybe to use plastic wrap instead of parchment paper. The parchment paper did okay, but the fruit leather really sticks to parchment paper. And the second round, I did a second round of this, I ended up going with plastic wrap. And while I'm not super excited about using plastic wrap in a dehydrator because it's heating up plastic, right? And that just seems weird to me. I'd rather use the paper. The paper is very, very hard to deal with afterwards. It's very hard to get the fruit leather off of it. The second round that I did with the plastic wrap worked a lot better. It was easier to put the liquid fruit leather in there. It was easier to peel the leather off. It just was all around much easier. But I do got to figure out, I might end up going with silicone flat trays, but then I would have to upgrade my dehydrator to just a straight flat dehydrator versus the one with the thing in the center, and those tend to be more expensive. So I don't know, maybe I'll find something that is workable for mine, or maybe I'll get some silicone trays or flats that I can cut into the shape of my dehydrator. So then all I do is I roll it up, and then I take some scissors and I cut them into bite-sized pieces. You can put them into a jar at this point or into a baggie. I like the jar just because they're just going to keep longer. And these do not have to be refrigerated because they're dehydrated at 140 for about 20, I think it was like 140 for about 12 hours, maybe 18. think it was 12 to 18 hours, and it depends on the thickness. Now this first round that I did was very, very thick. The second round I did when I used the actual plastic wrap was much thinner, and it seemed to work out a lot better. The thinner seemed to be easier to cut, seemed easier to come off the plastic wrap, and it seemed to dehydrate a lot faster. It was more towards that 12 hours. Our last recipe is going to be canning some mulberry pie filling. Once again, this is not a tested recipe. I am breaking all the rules. I'm definitely doing some rebel canning these days, but once again, I tested my pH. I feel comfortable with it. I am not saying that, you know, you have to do it this way. You can do this pie filling and you can freeze it, or you can make the pie filling fresh and then use it in a pie that day. Put it in a pie shell and freeze the whole pie shell. There's a lot of ways that you can do this if you're not comfortable with canning it. I measured out 14 cups of my frozen mulberries, and then I put them in this colander with a bowl underneath to catch the liquid, because what you're trying to do is use some of this liquid for the pie filling. I did not do this correctly. You know, I've never done pie filling before, and there's something called clear gel that you should use to create that thickness of the pie filling instead of cornstarch, especially if you're canning. I'd never done it before, so I didn't exactly know the right way to do this. And the right way to do this would have been to take the liquid that came off of my berries, which I had about 4 cups of the berries liquid, not the berries yet, but just the liquid that had drained off. And then you take your lemon juice, which I believe was 1 cup of lemon juice, and then you take another 4 cups of water. If you get a full 8 cups of the juice, cool, that is all you'll need, but I didn't get a full 8 cups. Now what I had done was I put the clear gel, according to the instructions of the quantity, into the liquid before the liquid was hot. And that's not what you're supposed to do. What you're supposed to do is you're supposed to get the liquid all hot, add your sugar, add your lemon juice, and then add your clear gel when you add your sugar when it's boiling. I didn't do this, so it made for a lot of stirring and a very thick consistency. It was very, very hard to work with. So definitely wait to add the clear gel until, you know, it's boiling and you're ready to add your sugar. That's when you would add your clear gel. I'm going to put the recipe down in the description because I can't remember exactly how much sugar I added. I think it might have been 4 cups. And then I'm just going to mix that in really good. This would have been the right point once it started boiling to add my clear gel, but I didn't. It's actually in there right now, and it gets almost difficult to manage and use later on. So here's that 1 cup of lemon juice that I should have added earlier. I added an additional 4 cups of water because my juice had only produced 4 cups instead of the full 8 cups. And then I get that all mixed together. Once it is boiling, you have it to the right thickness from the clear gel. That's when you're going to add your mulberries. And you add them at the very end so that way they don't break apart. You want the berries to kind of stay together. And the only way to do that is to add it at the very, very end. So here's all the mulberries that I'm adding, and then I'm just going to gently mix them in. Once they're all mixed in, I'm going to add them to the jars. These have once again gone through the Presto electric canner to be heated up and sterilized, and they're going to go into a water bath canner. The problem I found with canning pie filling, I don't know if it's a mulberry problem or if it's how I did the clear gel, I'm not sure, but I did 2 rounds of this because I had a serious problem with a lot of jars not sealing properly because the pie filling siphoned out, and I left a good 1 inch here, but that was not good enough. In the subsequent round that I did of second set of canner, I did 1.5 inches, and that seemed to be just right. By doing 1.5 inch of headspace on these versus 1 inch, it helped make sure that they did not siphon and that they didn't expand so much that all that stickiness got underneath the lid. So I ended up having to do this process twice. I learned a lot about canning pie filling this round. It was something that I struggled through, but we got it right in the end after the second batch. So I processed these for 30 minutes in boiling water in my Presto canner, and here they are coming out. I believe this was my second round. The first round, if you would have seen that come out, it had nothing but red juice inside the canner. It was definitely a problem. And as they cooled, it expanded even more to where a lot of the seals popped off. So it was not my best canning day, but we did get those. I took the seals off them, I cleaned them up, I put new seals on them, and I reprocessed them a second time, and they turned out wonderful. I'm really excited to have all of these. You can see how much space there is on that one. That you can, as compared to this one, but I'm really excited to have all these on the shelf to make pie filling in the future, to make my lemonade, my mulberry lemonade, to have these fruit leather snacks. It's been such an enjoyable process growing this tree and processing these berries and just seeing how much food they produce. Thanks so much for hanging out with me today and learning all about the best fruit tree in the yard, which is a mulberry. Make sure to head down and give me a thumbs up if you like this video. Happy gardening, guys.